Okay, we'll begin. So today we're going to look at Chapter 2 from the Wisdom of Crowds. So again, it's available on wisdomofcrowds.blogspot.com. So on Friday we looked at an introduction to the concept. What is it that Surowiecki means by the wisdom of crowds? And what are the different elements involved in it? Maybe from Friday, one element that we should go back over towards the very end is this concept of regression to the mean. So this is from the slides for Friday's class, where we looked at a couple of examples of the madness of crowds. But Surowiecki has sort of adapted from what Mackay wrote in the 1840s on the madness of crowds and looks at the wisdom of crowds. And his sort of starting point is the work by Sir Francis Galton back at the start of the 20th century, who looking at this competition of judging the weight of an ox. Again, Galton's sort of starting point was the madness of crowds. He felt the crowd would not come up with the right answer, and that the crowd would be, the general crowd of commoners, as he referred to them, would make huge errors. But of course, what he found completely surprised him, and that the answer that the crowd came up with was pretty much spot on. A difference of £1 between the guess of the crowd as judged by Galton and the actual weight of the ox when it was prepared. So 1197 versus 1198. Surowiecki adapts this and moves away slightly from what Galton was looking at. To get the wisdom of the crowd, to get the answer from the crowd, Galton looked at the median being the middle guess. So if you ranked all the guesses from smallest to largest, what Galton said was, well, what's the one in the middle? What Surowiecki does is take the mean, or the average. So he adapts slightly from what Galton is looking at and says what you should do is get the average answer in the crowd. So that if you had the 800 bits of paper from those people that guessed at the country fair, look at the 800 answers, add them all up and divide by 800. Get the mean. So what Surowiecki suggests is the concept that takes place is what's called regression to the mean. So he says every person's answer to a question has two components. There's information and error. Everybody that participated in the competition might have had some notion of what it was they were trying to do. We're trying to guess a weight in pounds. How big is a pound? How big is the ox? And might have some prior experience. So they come to it with some information. And clearly then everybody's answer will also have error. Nobody guessed exactly the right answer. Just as Galton hoped nobody had the right answer, but when it came to the aggregate, he found it was quite close. So some people guessed too low. They don't think it's that large. It couldn't be that heavy, maybe a pound. Wouldn't sum up to that amount. Some people guessed way too high, over-exaggerate. So everybody's adding some bit of information, whatever they know about weights and comparative weights, and everybody also has huge amounts of errors. The issue with the wisdom of crowds is that if we can subtract the error, you're left with the information. If we can get the information to accumulate and the errors to cancel out, we're left with the error. So if the errors cancel out, as you would expect, well, why would we expect the errors to cancel out? Some people guess too low. Instead of giving a guess of around 1200, they give a guess of 4, 5, 6, 700. Other people guess too high. Instead of being at 1200, they're at 15, 16, 17, 1800. If you're looking for the mean or average guess, the errors that are made below the actual answer and the errors that are made above the actual answer will cancel. So as long as you have positive and negative errors, they'll cancel out. And the group's decision will be based on information. So if you get the average of the group, and there are some people who overestimate and other people who underestimate, these errors will cancel. And you'll be left with the information, provided, of course, that there's information there to begin with. If nobody had any concept of what the measurement unit was, what are you measuring the thing in? How many kilopascals in an oxen? Sure, nobody'd have a clue what you're measuring there. Or nobody knew about the concept of size. Well, there'd be no information. So you do need information to begin with, and then you need the errors to cancel out. Some people to make guesses that are too high, other people to make guesses that are too low. But then once you calculate the mean, and to a certain extent the median, the same principle generally holds. With the median, it'll just be go through all the low guesses, get to the middle guess, and then go through all the high guesses. So the median is the middle guess, the mean is the average. So if some people guess above the actual answer, other people guess below, these errors will cancel out. I'm not quite sure why there's an apostrophe on errors, but the errors should cancel out. So this concept of regression to the mean is that in a diverse group that the errors will cancel, that the wisdom of the crowd will actually emerge. So what Mackay looked at the madness of crowds, he saw the information as being eliminated, and that in a group or a crowd, it converges to the level of the lowest. That what comes out from a group is the error. What Surowiecki is looking at, if you get the mean, get the average guess of the crowd, what emerges isn't even the best guess of the crowd, is a better guess, the total, the aggregate. It puts together all the information in the crowd. That even if somebody only comes with a small bit of information, that will get added in, and the information accumulates, and the errors cancel. So this is the element that Surowiecki is looking at. What do we need for this condition of regression to the mean to hold up? Well, we need diversity. It should be pretty clear why we need diversity. If everybody guesses below the answer, well, then the errors don't cancel out. If everybody guesses above the answer, the errors don't cancel out. Without diversity, the errors accumulate. And this is what happens in stock market bubbles. Nobody's predicting that prices will fall, everybody's predicting they'll rise. Everybody's making a mistake in the same direction, all the mistakes add up. You don't get the mistakes cancelling out. And this is perhaps, from an economic system, one of the issues with capitalism versus communism. In communism, the mistakes tended to accumulate. There was no correction mechanism. Communism as a sort of way of organising society has generally failed. There may also be problems with capitalism, but it tends to be from the top down rather than the bottom up. And there's no suggestion that those who operate in a capitalist system are any way smarter than those that operate in a communist system. In a capitalist system, for example, in the restaurant industry, every restaurant that opens up, if 100 restaurants open up, within 5 years, 90 of them will have closed. 90 of the decisions made were wrong. 90 of the businesses opened failed, and about 10 of them will survive. But the issue is that the decisions, the errors aren't allowed to accumulate, whereas in communism, there is no sort of self-correction mechanism. If they decide to make a poor product that people don't want or people can't use, it's a decision made in an office, and the decision accumulates and builds up and builds up. So in a capitalist system, you do get some information emerging. What is effective, what isn't. In a communist system, you don't. So the whole concept of diversity, successes and failures, one cancelling out the other. You need independence, decentralization, and aggregation. So somebody brings their own private information. They form their own opinion. You allow people to focus on particular areas and bring their own local knowledge, and then you find some way of bringing it all back together again. One way of bringing it all back together in Surowiecki's eyes is this concept of the mean. Add up all the individual guesses, get the mean, that's your method of aggregation, and that gives you the outcome. So today we're going to look at the first of these conditions for the wisdom of crowds, this concept of diversity. Who should we address questions to? Should we ask the audience in the situation of who wants to be a millionaire? Or should we phone a friend, ask an expert? Who is more likely to give the answer? So here we're looking at diversity. So diversity helps because it adds perspectives that would otherwise be absent and weakens some of the destructive characteristics of group decision making. That if you're looking for a decision to be made, diversity is good because it brings new information, and also it sort of doesn't lead you into a concept where everybody goes with the flow, that you actually can get dissenting voices. Again, in an Irish context, there are some views that some of the problems we've had in the financial and banking sector over the past couple of years have been led because of a lack of diversity. Everybody was thinking in the same direction. So groups that are too much alike find it difficult to keep learning. Well, who's bringing the new information? Because each member is bringing less and less new information. If you have a group of 10 people and bring in somebody that's pretty much on the same wavelength, what new information are you bringing? So in Ireland, we have this concept in the banks of hiring insiders. So you see AIB hiring a CEO yesterday. In broad terms, the decision has been generally welcomed. I suppose the primary reason why it's generally been welcomed is that he is willing to take the job at the salary cap. The salary cap being €500,000 a year. I'm sure there's lots of people who'd be willing to take a job at that level of salary. But secondly, because he was an outsider. He was bringing a new perspective. That a lot of the complaints against the banks had been this idea of internal promotion. You came up through the ranks, up through the bank, and got to the top. Well, one issue that is if you're coming through the system, well, your way of thinking is actually, in a sense, influenced by the system. You're not bringing anything new. That if you get one CEO who came up through the system and get him to the top, if you replace him and they get another person who came up through the same system and put him at the top, what difference is there? If they've both come through the same path, both come through the same system. So the argument is that if you get, in the parlance, an outsider, you're bringing a diverse set of information. You're actually adding. All the information in the bank still stays there. The bank doesn't lose the information because it's lost a CEO. That CEO has brought the information up with them, so it's still at all the different levels. But by bringing in an outsider, and this David Duffy has a wide and varied career, you're hoping to gain. So homogeneous groups, so homo being same, homogeneous groups are great at doing what they do well, but spend too much time exploiting and not enough time exploring. How can we do what we're doing now better? So focus on a very narrow funnel, rather than sort of branching out and looking at maybe the larger picture. So in an Irish context, it was, how do we catch Anglo? And that clearly got the traditional banks into serious trouble. So groups that tend to have the same people suffer from a lack of diversity. So if you have everybody making the same guess, what is the advantage of getting the average? So if in Galton's case there was 800 people and they all looked at it and all made the same guess, it doesn't matter whether you look at one guess, whether you look at the median guess, whether you look at the mean guess, they're all the same. If you have people making the same choice, the same decision, there's no benefit in a group. You may as well just have one. So displaying diversity is an issue. And one problem with it is that maybe some people don't want to be diverse. You want to fall in with the crowd. That you look at what's happening around you and say, well, I just follow on what's happening before. That you might have valuable private information, but maybe out of a sense of shyness, out of a sense of not wanting to be different, out of a sense of sort of following on the actions of others, this information isn't elicited. And in group situations, and we're going to look at a fairly simple experiment here, there are situations where people have private information that would be valuable to the group, but just keep it to themselves. And it does lead to substantial problems. So Solomon Ash, a psychologist, has done a number of groundbreaking experiments through time. And this is looking at conformity. So this is where people just follow on what everybody else is doing. They might have their own private belief about what's happening, but follow on and look at what's happening. So this is a little 4-minute clip.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Ash reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3.
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence. Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me. 1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. 2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but what should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreement with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1. 1. 2. 1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with a group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1. 1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
So the individual might bring private information, but seeing what's happening around them, particularly if it's unanimous, and that tended to be the most powerful of the settings, when everybody agreed with a particular outcome, they basically hid their private information, went along with what they saw rather than what they believed. And the Nyberg report on the Irish banking failure alluded to groupthink as one of the problems, that maybe there was people in the system who felt that this wasn't going in the right direction, but they didn't want to stand out. They didn't want to stand against the crowd. They didn't want to go against the flow, and everybody just followed along. That there basically wasn't in place sort of the process and procedures that would allow for diverse opinions, that would allow for discussion of particular issues. So homogeneous groups where everybody has the same idea can in a sense become self-fulfilling. That even if there are only 1 or 2 people who are heterogeneous, who have different views, they can be swamped. So in this instance, there's no benefit from being a group. The whole benefit of being a group is that you have a diverse set of opinions, where some of the opinions are wrong, some of the opinions are right. They're not saying that everybody in the group has to be right. And for the group to guess the weight of the ox, it wasn't necessary that anyone knew the group, that anyone knew the answer. What was simply required is that they had a diverse set of opinions. Some people overestimated, other people underestimated. And as long as that occurred, the guess of the group would have been reasonably accurate. But if all the group goes together, if all the group conforms, well, they're not getting the benefit of collective decision. You just may as well track an individual. So if we're going to track an individual, should we try to get the best individual? Who should we seek to get advice? Who should we seek to get a decision? Who should run a bank? Is David Duffy the best person to run Allied Irish Bank? Should we get a group of people? Could we run AIB better than he would? We probably know something about banking individually. If we could aggregate that, will we be able to run the bank as a group? Or should we actually chase the expert? Is there one single best person out there? Is there a best person out there for offering sports tips? Is there a best person out there for picking stocks? Is there a best person out there for running companies? Is there a best person out there for being the manager of a soccer team? Whatever it might be, should we chase the expert? So there is suggestions out there that the value of expertise is overrated. That the payments made for these so-called seers tends to be exaggerated. So there's little evidence to suggest that one may become an expert in something as broad as decision-making, policy or strategy. Some decisions, policies or strategies are better than others, but is there somebody out there who is best at selecting them? Or is it just a matter of luck? Over time, will one person come out better than the other for a simple matter of luck? So we'll find an expert amongst our group. What I need is a coin. I don't even have a coin. I do. Give me €2 coin. So everyone just stand up. In the page in front of you, everyone stand up. That's an order, yes? Stand up. In the sheet in front of you, write down heads or tails. So just pick one, heads or tails. So I'm going to say the map of Europe is heads, and whatever's in the back of this coin, it's not a harp, is tails. Liberty, égalité, and fraternity, French. So heads or tails. So you have heads or tails written down. So it is the map, so we're going for heads. If you wrote down tails, sit down. Okay, you have a choice again. Beside your initial choice, write down heads or tails. Write down something. So heads or tails. And it's the back, the French thing. So that's tails. So if you wrote heads, sit down. Geez, you're not very good. So we're on to number 3. So again, write down heads or tails. It's the map again, so we're for heads. If you wrote down tails, you're done. So if you say heads, stay up. So we're down to 5. Our expert coin flippers. So write down heads or tails again. And it's the back of the coin, so we're going for tails. If you wrote heads, stay where you are. We're down to 2. We'll leave it at that. We're 2. So 5 tosses of a coin. We've 2 expert people at telling whether a coin will come up heads or tails. They got 5 right in a row. Does that mean they're experts? You think you're an expert? Probably. But somebody's going to come out on top, and somebody come out on top for a very long period. We started off with a group of maybe 60 or 70. After 5 periods, it was down to 5 people. What if we started off with 10, 12, 15,000? Some people win, some people lose. Like, how many people are there out there offering stock picking funds, mutual funds? Somebody come out and claim, I have beaten the market for 5 years in a row. And people over here pick the correct side of a coin 5 times in a row. In a large enough group, you are going to get people who are successful for no other reason than they were lucky. I assume we'll put it down to luck rather than any greater expertise on their behalf. But if this was, say, an issue of beating the market, say it wasn't tossing a coin, head you stay standing up, tails you sit down. Say it was beating the market. Half of all fund managers will beat the market, half will underperform the market. They are the market. They're the ones buying and selling. So if there is 16,000 of them one year, 8,000 of them will beat the market, 8,000 won't. We come to the second year. Of the 8,000 that beat it in the first year, 4,000 will beat it, 4,000 won't. Come to the third year, 2,000 beat it, 2,000 don't. The fourth year, 1,000 have beaten it 4 years in a row. The fifth year, 500. The sixth year, 250. The seventh year, 125. The eighth year, 62. The ninth year, 30. The 10th year, 15. 15 people after 10 years got up and said, I've beaten the market every year in a row. I am the best stock picker that's out there. Well, they're just guessing a flip of a coin. By sheer weight of numbers, they will come out on top. So in chasing the expert, we can at times get to believe that somebody is better than they actually are. So we're looking at some sort of predictions of experts. Experts don't necessarily always get it right. So Henry Warner back in 1927 famously said, "Who the hell wants to hear actors talk?" as the era of the silent film was drawing to a close. Thomas Watson, the head of IBM in 1943, said, "I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers." I'd say a lot of people could own 5 computers, not in the entire world. So are these amusing anomalies or a reflection of the performance of experts? How are experts? Well, between 84 and 99, almost 90% of mutual fund managers underperformed the Wilshire 5000 index. So this is sort of looking over a much longer period, that's 16 years. So take out sort of the luck factor. Over that period, you'd expect them possibly to break even. However, 90% of mutual fund managers underperformed the market. And whatever this Wilshire 5000 index was, generally the number in an index is the number of companies that are in it. So the Wilshire 5000 index has 5,000 companies. That's not selecting companies at all, that's piling them all in and see what's happening. The mutual fund managers might have 10, 20, 30 firms that they would target. For bond fund managers, the figure was 95%. So J. Scott Armstrong has undertaken studies of expertise. So he says, "I could find no studies that showed an important advantage for expertise." So this concept of a monkey throwing darts at the Wall Street Journal, picking investments, would be as good as a highly paid investment manager. So the concept that expertise has very little to do with it. There are some who suggest that the monkey and the darts approach isn't very appropriate. That what you actually get is get the monkey to throw a wet towel at the Wall Street Journal, and any share that gets wet you purchase. That by picking 5, you're not really doing that effective. Pick them all. Get something like the Wilshire 5000, buy them all. And in many areas, agreement between experts is very low. Surely you think that people that were focused on a particular area, that they would come to the same conclusion. So if you look at chapter 2, you'll see some reference to some of the work by Scott, and an article by him is posted to Blackboard. And he looked at areas, particularly in medical areas, where doctors are presented with the same set of symptoms. So people who have gone through the training, those to be at the top of their particular specialities. And at many times the sort of agreement amongst them was less than 50%. They were reaching different conclusions. So clearly if we thought they were the experts, we would expect some agreement between them. So this led, I think, Armstrong to suggest that there's called a seer-sucker theory. That there are suckers out there willing to pay for the existence of seers, these experts, these people who are better at making predictions. So no matter how much evidence is produced that seers do not exist, suckers will pay for the existence of seers. So is paying $500,000 for the CEO of AIB enough? Should we be going out to find the best CEO in the banking industry? Paying 5, 10, 15, 20 million, whatever it takes to find the best. In most pay scales, you generally find that the best earns far more than the average, and a huge multiple. Just take soccer and the average pay in the Premiership compared to the average pay in the Championship. Is there that much of a difference between the players that you could justify the huge gap in pay? Our fellas won't play when they're on 250 grand a week net, 400 grand a week gross. Like, I'm sure there's pretty much teams in the Championship who wouldn't pay that in wages in a month. Yeah, a level above it, one level above it, they're paying huge amounts for what might be small differences in ability. When looking at experts, it's not that well-informed, sophisticated analysts are of no use in making decisions, but the advice of one expert should be pooled with that of others to get the most out of him. So seeking experts or people who can make informed decisions isn't wrong. What essentially tends to be wrong is finding the best one, trying to chase and find the single best expert who will make the best decision. And in most cases, there is a situation where people suffer from this concept of chasing the expert. So we'll look at an example of this. horse racing. Clearly, if somebody can predict the winners of horses, they offer advantage to us. So this is a clip from a show that Darren Brown could be on Channel 4 ran a couple of years ago.
I'm here at Sandown Racecourse in Surrey. They're expecting 15,000 people here today and £500 million to be exchanged in cash. I'm here because I've developed a guaranteed system for winning at the horses. This system allows me to predict 24 hours in advance, quite openly, which horse will win in big high-profile races. Now, to prove this, 6 weeks ago, I took a woman, a random member of the public, and I told her which horse was going to win in a certain race. It did win, she was intrigued, and then did it again and again and again. She started to bet larger and larger amounts of money. Now today, that woman has scraped together every last penny that she could find, and she's risking it all on one final race. Is it really possible to accurately predict the winner of a horse race again and again and again? I'm going to tell you exactly how that's done. Welcome to the system.
So we'll watch about 10 minutes at the start, where he hooks her, and 10 minutes at the end. And that should be our luck for today.
Horse racing, often nicknamed the sport of kings, can be traced back to the 12th century after the English knights returned from the Crusades with Arab horses. They were bred with English horses to produce the thoroughbred that is the breed used in horse racing in the UK today. Since the chariot races of Roman times to the multi-million-pound global business today, horse racing has been a popular sport in many countries throughout history and is often inextricably associated with gambling.
Two to build the 5 minute 4 bar. In the reach line. 2 to 1. That's 2 to 1. The tic tac is 2 to 1. Is on the nose. Is 2 to 1. A bookmaker is a person who takes bets off of punters back horses, and the bookmaker pays you out if you win.
If it's 10 to 1, if you put a pound on, you get £10 back.
So somebody there just had £10 on Pascal at 7 to 2. Well, 7 to 2 is 3.5 to 1. So for their £10, they'll win £35. Plus their tennis stake, they'll get £45 return. But as you can see, we've got horses on the board here at 200 to 1, number 14. Now that's got practically no chance of winning. It's like me swimming the channel with a double bed on my back. It's got no possible chance. You know, but they've all got 4 legs. You know that they've all got 4 legs on the tail, so anything can happen.
It's just instinct, really. You just see a horse, you think, oh, that looks good. I'll maybe put my £5 on that one.
I was rather obsessed with gambling as a teenager, and in particular the idea of winning systems. And it was around that time that this system was born, a guaranteed way of having somebody win at the horses again and again and again. So I needed somebody who would benefit from my system. So I took a random member of the public after making sure that she didn't have a history of gambling, and I sent her an email without mentioning my name, predicting the winner of the next day's horse race.
My name is Khadisha. I live in Kew. I work 2 jobs. I have a son. My personal situation is I'm a single mum. I pay all bills by myself with the 2 jobs that I have. I never have a large sum of money because it always goes out because of responsibilities that I've got in life. I was sat at my desk when I got my first tip. I received an email first. I thought it was a bit crazy, a bit mad, but I thought, hey, I'm up for a laugh, so bring it on.
I didn't tell Khadisha that it was me sending her the predictions because I didn't want that knowledge affecting her. But instead, I set about sending her a number of anonymous tips sent over several weeks so that she would gain the confidence in the system that I wanted her to have.
I got it by email first, then I got confirmation again via text. It gave me details of the horse, time it was running and where it was running, and it said that I wasn't able to bet. I just have to watch the race.
We emailed Khadisha and offered her the chance to take part in a TV documentary about an anonymous tipster who claimed to have a perfect system for the horses. Along with the email, I also sent her my first prediction and told her not to place a bet, but just to make sure she watched the race. I told her that the 9:20 at Wolverhampton the next day would be won by a horse called Boz.
They're off. And Boz was slipping into its stride in the blue jacket to the inside.
On the day of the race, I hoped she'd be watching at home to see if the prediction would come true. She was, and she saw the race was won by Boz, as I predicted. I had got her attention.
I was gutted that I couldn't put a bet on, but hey, I watched it and it won.
Now that Khadisha was getting more intrigued, I asked her to keep a video diary of her experience from this point onwards and to keep the camera with her, as a tip could come at any time.
Placed my second bet now, it's a system, very confident. Race 2, when I was able to put a bet down, I was given just the name of the horse and the time. Again, I was at work, received it by text, again confirmed by email, and I literally left my desk. It wasn't even like I need to go out, I just zoomed out to the first betting shop, recorded myself, placed no bet. It was exciting actually.
My next prediction for Khadisha, again 24 hours in advance of the race, was for the 6:37 at Suffolk Downs in Boston in America, and for a horse called Laced Up to win.
When I was in Boston, I was like, how can you know he was going to win in Boston?
The system guarantees a winner, but despite how impossible that sounds, Khadisha was prepared to put up some of her own money. Amazingly, impossibly, as the system predicted, Laced Up won, despite not being the favourite. And Khadisha picked up her first winnings.
The second race I won about 28 quid.
Race 3 was at Carlisle, and my prediction was for Norton Brook to win, even though it was an 18-1 outsider, and therefore the horse that was least likely to win the race.
Me again, still here. Well, as you can see, I'm in the bookies now. Carlisle race, I've been told. So I'm now going to write out my slip. Fingers crossed. Norton Brook, 18-1. £20 to win. It better win, okay? Very anxious, nervous, you know, but excited because the last 2 races won. Oh, good God, this better win. Oh my God, and they're off. I've been confident in the system so far, so I'm going to remain confident. Holding this paper very tightly.
3 left to jump and Norton Brook keeps galloping on.
Norton Brook leads, oh my God.
And they come inside the final furlong. Norton Brook's been out in front for a long time. 2 miles west is gaining with every stride.
Oh my God, the horse is catching up. Oh my God, the horse is catching up.
Norton Brook, 2 miles west, he goes to the judge.
Norton Brook has won. Thank you, the system. Oh God, show me the money. Oh my God, show me the money. Ah! Can you believe that? On camera.
This is Khadisha's 3rd win in a row. She's just won £360 from a £20 bet on an 18-1 outsider that no one thought should win the race.
And it continues that for a few more races.
Feeling very nervous, but I'm ready to roll. Come on, baby.
We're not at £20 anymore.
Because of her faith in my system, Khadisha has borrowed from her father and since then has also been to a loan company for more money. She's now come to Sandown Racecourse prepared to gamble money she can't afford to lose. Once the bet is placed, I'm going to explain to her and to you how this incredible system really works.
It's been raining steadily here for the last couple of days. The going is very heavy, the ground's heavy. The favourite's likely to be Moon Over Miami, won last time out at Cheltenham. Mahogany Blaze next in, Paddy Brennan riding this horse for Nigel Twiston-Davis. The next one that I quite like is a horse called Pancake. Goes well on testing ground, likes the mud. Maradima, trained by Paul Nichols, top trainer. Any one of those 4 could win it.
When we last spoke to you, I told you you'd have to get quite a lot of money together for today's race.
Yes.
And I understand you've done that.
Yes, I have.
How much money have you got for this bet?
£4,000.
£4,000, which is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Can you tell me how you got that? I know you ended up getting some from a local company, but
yeah, and my dad as well. Some from my dad, so that's what makes it more scary for me. So I got some of my dad's money.
And did you tell your dad exactly what it was for?
Yes, and that's what made it even worse.
So your tip for today is horse number 2.
Okay.
Moon over Miami. So watch out for the green and white shirt. I'm going to go official bet for you because I don't want you seeing yet exactly how much you're going to win in a minute. So have you got a big envelope of cash on you somewhere?
I haven't got an envelope, I've got loads of cash.
Excellent.
That's a lot of money.
That is £4,000. Alright, okay. You definitely right to do this?
Yeah. Absolutely, I'll trust the sister and you.
I'm going to do it before the queue gets too long. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay. I'm really cracking it. I'm Am I really here? Is this really going on? Taking £1,000 from my dad makes me feel very overwhelmed and more anxious.
That's it. That's your £4,000. This is worth a lot of money. Please don't drop it or lose it. You alright?
Deep breaths, deep breaths.
Do you want to know how it's done? Yeah? So a couple of months ago we got in touch with you.
Yeah.
Remember? And we gave you that first tip.
Yeah.
You weren't the only person that we contacted. It was actually a very large group of people. It was almost 8,000 people.
My name is Christina Watkins, I'm 27.
The system works because Kadisha is not alone. When we contacted Kadisha, we also contacted a huge number of other people and gave them different tips. The system begins with 7,776 people. The people we contacted are then randomly divided into 6 equal groups. A 6-horse race is then chosen. In our case, it was the 920 at Wolverhampton, and each group of people is allocated the name of a different horse as the winner. Group 1 is given the name of horse 1, Group 2 is given the name of horse 2, Group 3, horse 3, and so on. Kadisha happens to be in the group which is given the horse named Boz. The race runs, and of course, only one horse can win. In our case, it is Boz. Apologies are then sent to the 5 groups of people whose horses do not win, blaming a glitch in the system, and they disappear from the process. Kadisha happens to be one of those people in the successful group which has had a winning horse. Now for race 2, this group is again split randomly into another 6 equal groups.
So today's Sunday, I'm waiting for my latest tip.
Well, I'm on route to the bookies now, so this will be my second bet.
Just found out, we've got the next bet through.
It's going to be the first time I've ever been bookies in my life, and it's going to be only the second time I've ever actually put a bet on.
I'm in the bookmakers, just at the moment seeing which horses are running and where they're running from.
Place my second bet now. System, very confident.
Again, Kadisha happens to be in the winning group, and the other 5 groups with losing horses are eliminated from the process. Exactly the same happens again for race 3. The winning group from the previous race is split into 6 equal groups. Race 3 is the 220 at Carlisle, and Norton Brook wins, giving us just 36 people, including Kadisha, who have had 3 consecutive winners in a row. In race 4, those 36 are divided into 6 groups of 6, and each is given the name of a horse in another 6-horse race. In our case, the race is the 345 at Newbury, and Formation wins, reducing the number of people from 36 to just our winning 6 people, one of whom happens to be Kadisha.
So again and again and again, and each time this group is narrowing and narrowing and narrowing, and you're just happening to be in the winning group each time it goes through. Now this continues to last week. You were not the only person being filmed thinking they were taking part in this show. We kept you all apart. You're all being filmed. You all think you're the only person being filmed for this show.
It's 92. It's near Tipperary.
I've just put on 150 quid of my own money on Here's Johnny.
The horse I'm betting on is called Nevada Royale.
None of you can understand how you've had these winning games all the way through. But we didn't know which one of you would win.
That's on the far side, Nevada Royale. And we know that Tipperary has gone there. Right, it is fallen on, so I guess that would be a lost bet. That's all it's almost level with your mouth. They kept on on to that. And he's down the bottom. He's already had it. Almost got that. No! Johnny Man,
Didn't work.
You win some, you lose some.
Oh, my horse didn't win.
It's a pyramid.
which begins with 7,776 people who are all sent anonymous tips. All but one of them are eliminated as the system fails for them, and we're left with just one single random winner who has had 5 consecutive wins. So last week at Newbury, you were that last person, the final person, just happened to have those winning names all the way through. That was last week. This week, it is just you and me, and those 5 horses. And there is no way of knowing which horse is going to win.
4 grand.
4 grand.
Oh my God, Dad.
Let's go through your head before we go.
Fucking hell, that's what's going through my head. Fucking hell. Oh my God. Fucking hell.
Let's go. We're going to get through. Where's the other stuff?
Oh my God, I haven't even done that.
And it continues. There's only another 6 minutes left, and you can figure out or look at it to see whether she wins or not. He's not going to take her money off her. It's television. He's making far more than 4 grand, don't worry. Might be big money to her, but it's not to him. So the issue is about this view of experts. Like we saw, even after 2 bets, she was delighted. The system works. She'd bought into it. We saw a similar thing happening here. A group of 80 people tossing a coin. We only had 2 options. We were losing one, or half the group, sorry, every time. In the horse racing example here, Darren Brown was losing 5-6, but he was holding on to 1/6 each and every time. If the number is sufficiently large enough, just by luck alone, somebody would come through and be on top. Whether it's flipping coins, picking horse races, beating a stock market, the value of expertise can sometimes be overstated. And what happens is people get fooled by randomness. She just ended up at the end by pure randomness. But when she handed over the 4 grand, she thought she was looking at a true seer. She thought she was looking at an expert. What the wisdom of crowds suggests is that rather than looking for an expert, the single expert, you should look for a group. That there might be somebody out there who offers constructive advice on picking horse winners, but get 5, 10, 15 different pieces of advice and combine them, get the average. So we try to pick the best expert rather than simply averaging across group. Trying to find the smart people will not lead you astray. Trying to find the smartest will. So trust in the average of a group of people rather than just the individual. So that's diversity and chasing the expert. Have a look at chapter 2 on the website, or if you've bought the book, and also read chapter 3. Chapter 2 is quite short, so you should be able to read chapter 3.